Welcome to the Buy Box Experts podcast. We bring to light the unique opportunities brands face in today's e-commerce world.
Hi, I'm James Thompson, one of the hosts of the Buy Box Experts podcast. I'm a partner with Buy Box Experts and the former business head of the Selling on Amazon team at Amazon, as well as Amazon's first account manager for the Fulfillment by Amazon program. I'm also the co-author of a couple of books on Amazon, including the recent book, Controlling Your Brand in the Age of Amazon. Today's episode is brought to you by Buy Box Experts. Buy Box Experts takes ambitious brands and makes them unbeatable. When you hire Buy Box Experts, you receive the strategy optimization and marketing performance to succeed on Amazon. Go to buyboxexperts.com to learn more. Before I introduce our guest today, I want to send a big shout out to the team at Disruptive Advertising. For off-Amazon advertising, Disruptive Advertising offers the highest level of service in the digital marketing industry. Focusing on driving traffic, converting traffic, and enterprise analytics, Disruptive helps their clients increase their bottom line month after month. Check out disruptiveadvertising.com to learn more. Our guest today on the podcast is John Merris, President and CEO of Solo Stove, a company that specializes in ultra-efficient wood-burning stoves and fire pits. Prior to Solo Stove, John worked at a number of product companies in senior financial, operational, and business development roles. John, welcome and thank you for joining us today on the Buy Box Experts podcast.
Thanks, James. Glad to be here.
A couple of weeks ago, John, I had the experience of seeing your Solo Stove in action when a neighbor of mine bought one and filled it up with wood from a fallen tree. In no time, many of my masked neighbors came out of their homes and were all drawn to the Solo Stove. It's quite unusual to be running a product company that inherently brings people together. Tell me more about why you decided the Solo Stove was a product that needed to be launched.
Yeah, to experience a Solo Stove is to really understand it. The first time that I really came to know the product, I remember hearing I'm not one of the founders, so I was interacting with two of the founders and they were telling me about this amazing fire, and I'm going, fire's kind of been around for a long time, guys. Like
long time.
I don't know how good this could really be or how different this could really be. And then I took one home and experienced it and it sounds like a very similar experience to the one you had a couple of weeks ago. There's just something quite beautiful about the engineering of the product. It was designed with really an engineering mentality. The airflow technology in the stove is such that it actually collects oxygen and feeds the fire from the bottom instead of just the top, which creates a much more efficient burn, and it heats so well that the smoke combusts. And so you end up with a nearly smokeless flame. So instead of playing musical chairs and sitting around kind of figuring out which way the wind's blowing, you can sit around for hours and then go inside and climb into bed and not smell like smoke or have your sheets smell like smoke. So kind of a cool experience, but it was really by happenstance that Solo Stove really came to be. In the beginning, 10 years ago when we launched the company, it was a small ultralight backpacking stove.
Okay.
And the goal was to boil water in under 10 minutes with twigs and leaves. And so how do we create a really hot fire in a really small confined space with just fuel that you could find out in the wilderness, so you're not having to pack fuel in with you, and do that consistently over and over and over again in a product that's not going to deteriorate. And so we launched the Solo Stove, which is what it was at the time. No intent of having, fire pits down the line and bigger versions of the camping stove. And fast forward, and we started getting customer feedback, and we ended up launching a larger stove and then a larger one, and then eventually got into the backyard, into the camping or the fire pit space. And that's kind of the product that you just described that you experienced. So it's grown and evolved over time. But it really started with that idea of an ultralight backpacking stove that would boil water in under 10 minutes.
That makes a lot more sense because it's not the sort of product, the big version is not the sort of product that I would see someone just saying, let's build a company that does this. I can see this much more logically. We actually thought that
it was a terrible idea, but our customers were telling us to make it. So we did for their benefit.
So on your company website, you call out your corporate mantra of create good. What does that ultimately mean, and how does it play out in your organization today?
Yeah, we have this product, as you mentioned earlier, that allows people to gather and connect around a fire or around food, whether it's the camping stove or the fire pits. And for us, there's something inherently good about making human connection. And we happen to live in a day and age where, electronics and distractions have kind of overtaken our lives. And so we take a ton of pride in making a product that allows people to kind of set that stuff aside for a second. And whether it's individually connecting with nature or with a pet or getting together with friends and family around a fire and making human connection, we think that there's something just beautiful and inherently good about that. And about this idea of taking those good moments, as we like to call them, and lead them to lasting memories. So you hear us say all the time, create good moments that lead to lasting memories. And that's kind of what Solo Stove is all about.
So your product today is sold on Amazon. It's sold on your own website. It's sold in physical retail. What do you think about with regards to selling into retail stores versus e-commerce channels? How do you differentiate what that's going to mean for your brand and the types of customers you're going to pursue?
From the beginning, we e-commerce was what we loved. In fact, we loved e-commerce before we even had the Solo Stove product. It was e-commerce that our founders were drawn to. And then they went about the product development process to find a product that fit well into that channel. And they loved the outdoors. And so naturally, they ended up kind of in the category that we're in. But we were always from the beginning focused on e-commerce. And that included, of course, even in the 2010, 2011 timeframe, included an Amazon strategy because Amazon was online selling, or at least they were starting to pioneer that space. And so as we think about it moving forward, retail will always play a role with our business, brick and mortar and physical stores, but we are by far and large focused on e-commerce. And the reason is because we love direct contact with our customers. And this will lead a little bit farther into some of the later discussions that we're going to have about Amazon. But because of this passion that we have to interact with the customer, to get immediate feedback from the customer, to listen to the customer and let their voice steer the direction of our products and the direction of our company, we ultimately are drawn towards channels that allow us to have that interaction more. And so there are other channels like brick and mortar retail where there's a kind of a middleman between us and the customer, or Amazon where there's a middleman between us and the customer that we still find very strategic for our business overall. And we actually have found ways to make that work really well for us. But we'll always steer towards that direct interaction with the customer because we love to hear what they have to say.
So when you're building a product online, this aspect of how do you build a brand and how do you get people to engage with the brand, not just the product, but with the brand? How do you think about that? Certainly, as you say, there's a middleman on Amazon. On your own website, there is not that middleman. What can you do to build a brand in different types of channels?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is honestly just taking a step back and deciding, what do you really do? Too often when I interact with somebody and I ask them, what do you guys do as a brand? They immediately say something like, if I were Solo Stove, I sell fire pits or I sell camping stoves. When in reality, what we sell are experiences. We sell the ability for people to create good moments that lead to lasting memories. And I think that turning that dial, and it seems like such a cliche thing to say, and it seems like something so obvious, and yet most people don't get there. They might even say it in a podcast setting like this when they're interviewed because it sounds really flowery, but then when they go to executing in their business, their mentality is sell more fire pits or sell more gadgets or whatever it is that they're doing. When in reality, if you just take a step back and don't just kind of talk the talk, but really walk the walk around what your mission is, that's how you build true brand loyalty and brand equity in the marketplace. For Solo Stove, that's exactly been our focus. When we're doing our day in and day out meetings, when we're having our marketing strategy meetings and we're talking about what promotions we're going to run, we're not talking about selling product. We're talking about selling experiences. How do we get more people creating good moments around a fire? And then that ultimately leads to growth, and it leads to brand equity. But it's not by sitting around talking about selling product. And I think that's a big mistake a lot of brands make.
when we talk about the Amazon channel, that's really a transactional marketplace where consumers come and they do unbranded search. They look at a bunch of products. They say, that one looks good. Okay, I'm going to buy that after I click on the product listing and I say, yeah, that looks reasonable. Obviously, that type of transactional nature changes the way in which you have to position your brand on an Amazon versus, say your own shopping cart. How do you think about what is good enough for an Amazon versus what is the enriched experience that you can create on your own website?
Yeah. So for Solo Stove, about 60% of our business is word of mouth. So
I can believe it.
Apparently sit around fires together, right? So there's something kind of cool about that.
Yeah.
You don't normally do it by yourself. I mean, generally, every now and then there's a loner that grabs the beer by himself and sits around the fire, but it's not super common. And even if they start that way, as you mentioned, the neighbors start coming out and the family starts coming out and going, hey, there's a fire. It seems right to just sit around this thing. Mm-hmm. So we have that going for our brand, which has been pretty exciting. For us, Amazon, we treat, for better or worse, a little bit differently than the way you kind of have thought about it in your head. We actually don't do unbranded search in Amazon. We've stayed away from it. When somebody's looking for a fire pit, we don't go for that customer. That's not somebody that we're looking for. But when somebody has experienced Solo Stove with a neighbor or with a friend or with a family member, but they prefer to shop on Amazon because they're just conditioned to go to Amazon to search and they look for Solo Stove, we want to make sure that they come away from Amazon with a Solo Stove. So our mentality and strategy around Amazon is actually more focused around branded search and making sure that customers that prefer that channel are able to find us and transact. It goes back to our brand, which is focused around giving people time back as well. So we talk about creating good and doing good. And part of good for us internally is time is a precious commodity. We can't buy it. No matter how much money you have, the one commodity in life you cannot buy is time. So if we can give back to our customer, that's the greatest good that we can do as a customer or as a brand. And so customer service, unpacking our product, using our product, making it as stress-free and as easy as possible. Those are all the things we think about because they give time back to the customer. And then the same applies from that mentality to Amazon for us. If we can make it super fast and easy for you to get a Solo Stove through Amazon, as you could through solostove.com or through REI, one of our brick and mortar partners, we're going to do that. So that's kind of our mentality. Again, for better or worse, we certainly could probably sell more on Amazon, but our strategy has been more to deliver the product where the customer wants it.
So our agency works with brands primarily to help them sell more on Amazon. And when I was saying this unbranded search, it's not that we want to play in the unbranded search space, but about 70% of all product search on Amazon is unbranded. And so inherently, if you don't have a particularly strong brand name, then you need to play in the unbranded space in order to get any level of visibility. Quite frankly, you also have a rather differentiated product. If you're selling vitamins, there's 5,000 guys that sell vitamin C in a bottle. Right. That's not the same thing in your category. But I do want to talk about the experience of, as a consumer, when I go on your Amazon product listings, there's a very, very rich experience there. There's high quality content, high quality video. There's bullet points that are very rich with detail. You've got enhanced brand content that spells out all sorts of experiential aspects. There's a lot that went into building that experience and helping customers answer their questions. Tell me more about that journey of getting to the point where you've got something that you think works when it comes to providing content and answers to questions that consumers inherently are going to have when they shop on Amazon.
Yeah, it's kind of twofold. That the two points that I'll make around the way that we approach Amazon and why you've experienced or see what you see when you go to the Solo Stove store on Amazon. Mm-hmm. The first one is just related in general to this kind of unbranded search or unbranded content that's happening on Amazon, right? So to your point, 70% of the traffic or the searches happening on Amazon are not branded search. It's like a search, it's like Google, right? Yep. Through a marketplace. And we wanted to create, it's not that we don't want to earn any unbranded content or unbranded search or unbranded customers that don't really know about Solo Stove yet. There's a lot of people that are on the fringe. They might put in something like smokeless fire pit or fire pit or something more generic like that. When I talked about our strategy just a few minutes ago, I was more talking about our paid strategy on Amazon. From an organic standpoint, we've put tremendous effort into taking people that are maybe on the fringe that aren't familiar with the Solo Stove brand yet, or maybe they've experienced Solo Stove, but they don't know the name.
Okay.
So that happens often. They sit around the stove and they go, "What's that? Oh yeah, I sat around this beautiful stainless steel smokeless fire pit."
Yeah.
And they go into Amazon and they type in beautiful stainless steel smokeless fire pit. Well, we're not the only game in town, and there's other products out there. And so then how do you get your brand to be the one that they end up finding? And the way you do that is through really rich content. And so this goes back to, having good keywords in your descriptors, your good bullet points, good videos, so that people can educate themselves, as you mentioned, and really find themselves tying what it is that they were looking for to your brand. And that's kind of point number one with our content. Point number two is, I mentioned this earlier, it's way more important to us that people understand that we're selling experiences, the ability to get out. I feel like I compete more against theme parks than I do other fire pit companies. I'm trying to get dollars from you for what you might spend to go to Disney or to go to Six Flags and have a great experience with your family than I am another fire pit company. And so this rich content that you talked about, that almost feels like it's sucking you into the experience. It's really intended to do that so that you can almost feel like you're having that experience, or you desire that experience enough to go ahead and transact. So those are really the two strategies around our Amazon store and our Amazon content that have gone into why we've invested so much in the content and so much time into both visual and textual content on Amazon.
What can you do on your own website that you can't otherwise do on Amazon?
We can talk to the customer directly with more intentionally. So there's ways now with Amazon, they're getting a little bit better at kind of letting you find ways to interact, especially post-purchase. But on the website versus Amazon, what we find is the ability to interact with the customer. So we can capture information from the customer faster, even pre-purchase. So we can get phone numbers, we can get emails, we can throw them into flows. And then that ultimately allows us to create that experience either better, enhance the experience, or do it faster than we can through Amazon. That's probably the main thing that we think about as we think about the differentiation between the two.
Take me through the planning and skill and data that goes into creating an open box experience for your product. As you talked about, when a consumer first interacts with that physical product arriving on their doorstep, there's a lot going on when you open that box. Take me through that, and how did you get to the point that you refined that?
Yeah, so we had this internal mission statement related to the packaging side of the business that was box to burn in 5 minutes. So we had this idea, like, didn't know if it was possible. Maybe it was far-fetched, but it was like, that box arrives on the doorstep, the customer sees it, box to burn in 5 minutes. Like, how do we deliver that? And a lot of it had to do with how assembled is the product when it comes out of the box. And so one of our first rules was like no bolts, no screws, no washers, like no parts. Okay. You got to pull the thing out and it's got to be ready to go. And so fully assembled was a big deal for us. And even the manual itself, you'll notice when you unbox our product, it's a one pager. It's it's a single-sided PDF. And so there's literally 4 steps, and it's like remove from box, take out of the plastic, flip over the flame ring, put in your starters and wood and light, and you're done. Like, that's it.
There's this little line item that says, burn the packaging. So if you have to return it, you don't have any packaging to return with.
we should, although we have no problem sending people new packaging, but nobody returns it. So
I'm of course joking. It's unlike most products from that perspective. This concept of let me start enjoying this as fast as I can versus sometime this weekend when I have time, I'll get the wrench out and I'll get myself to a point where maybe I can be enjoying this with my family. you've cut all that out, as you say, get to the point where you can enjoy things very, very quickly.
We love, like, people will, I just was reading a review yesterday where a guy, I mean, it was Thursday yesterday, right? And a guy's like, I knew it was coming. I had the tracking email and it arrived, and I was fully thinking, like, this weekend we're going to crack it open.
Right.
And I just couldn't help myself. And I found myself outside for 3 hours, having to go to work the next morning. And that's exactly the type of experience that we hope our customers are having with the product.
Let's go back to Amazon. I want to hear from you over the years that you've been selling on Amazon. What have you learned that was unexpected about the Amazon customer, about the experience of selling on Amazon? When you think of Amazon relative to your own website, what good, bad, ugly have you had to deal with the Amazon channel?
Oh gosh, there's been so many learnings. The founders a long time ago, early on in the evolution of our brand, were approached by Amazon, probably by you in your former role, and were offered a tremendous amount of money to buy a huge stock of Solo Stove product and have it sold, 1P versus 3P on Amazon.
Yep.
It was like 5 times what they had sold total in the company at the time was what they were offered. And they could have taken it and made a lot of money in the moment.
Short term. Yep.
And one of the brothers really wanted to. And one of the brothers, there are 2 founders, there were brothers. One of them was adamant that it would destroy their business. And fortunately, the one brother that was adamant it would destroy their business won out, and they declined the offer, and they proceeded to continue to sell on Amazon as they had been as a 3P seller, and continued to grow their brand organically on their own website. That was in 2013 when the company was just a few years old. That was a big learning. I think that if I were to give advice to brands out there that are kind of thinking about their approach, if you have any long-term aspirations for your brand or your product, you can't sell out early. If you do, I won't say that it's impossible to rebound, but I'll say that you're making it 10 times harder for yourself because you lose control, and Amazon's going to sell your products for whatever they can in order to maximize the output of the platform. And that's not necessarily going to be what's best for your brand. It's going to be best for the consumer, which is ultimately what Amazon believes is best for Amazon, is what's best for the consumer. And so the brands kind of get left by the wayside often. That was a big learning for us. On the positive side of Amazon, I think that coming out of that experience is, while Amazon for us has always been a necessary evil, one thing that we are still learning, and I think we're getting better and better at, is not being afraid of great growth on the Amazon platform as the rest of our business grows. So there is really healthy growth to be had on Amazon, and it can be done the right way without diminishing or hurting your brand. And there are just some key, what I would say, key principles to follow when selling on Amazon that allow you to protect your brand outside of Amazon, but still grow substantially within the Amazon platform. And some of those include things like making sure that you're delivering the same customer experience to your Amazon customers as you are to the rest of your customers. That's one that I think brands sometimes are like, it's Amazon, like Amazon will handle it, or, it's Amazon and I really just care about the customers on my site because that's just going to hurt the Amazon brand. The reality is that people start associating the product, the brand that's on the product, to their experience. And so it doesn't matter if they bought it on Amazon or in a retail store on your site, they're expecting to have a great experience. And we started, especially about 1.5 or 2 years ago, to making sure that we were just as good to our customers on Amazon and other channels as we are to customers on our site. Pricing is also a really key factor, pricing strategy on the way that you think about selling on Amazon. You obviously still need to be as profitable or try to be as profitable selling through the Amazon platform as you do through other channels. But thinking about how you're pricing, when you're pricing, how the pricing on Amazon relates to when you're running certain promotions offsite, so that things are not super discombobulated in your brand.
Yep.
Because again, customers know now that you're controlling, or at least in most instances, you're controlling for Solo Stove. We're controlling what's happening on Amazon, and we're controlling what's happening on our store. So when things don't sync up very well, customers are calling Solo Stove's customer service line saying, like, why is it this price on Amazon and it's this price on your store or whatever? And so we've tried to create a consistent experience for customers.
When we talk about this consistent experience, we have worked with far too many brands who wake up one day and discover that their Amazon catalog is ultimately being managed by random third-party sellers. The branding looks terrible. Consumers come along and end up with a very different experience learning about the brand on Amazon versus learning about it anywhere else. And that lack of consistency definitely creates, challenges in maintaining brand promises. And so getting brands to take that task seriously and create consistent, accurate, up-to-date messaging on all sites, that's hard for brands to get their head around. And yet, for many products, the consumer is going to end up going all over the web before they finally make their purchase. And they want to see the same messages everywhere. How have you thought about controlling messages when you're dealing with some of your physical retailers who may also have online presences and selling your products? How do you manage that?
Yeah, two pieces to that. So the first one is the pop-ups of other third-party sellers with your product. So that's one that we have fought really hard against.
Yep.
We have reseller agreements with all of our retailers that restrict their ability to sell on Amazon.
Yep.
It doesn't mean it never happens, but we do a pretty good job. I'd say we do one of the better jobs of any brand I'm aware of at making sure that Solo Stove is the one selling its product on Amazon and not some other random brand that also has a physical store.
Yep.
That's one way within the Amazon platform to make sure that the messaging is consistent. You don't have people hijacking listings and winning the buy box from you and all that kind of stuff, kind of competing against yourself, if you will. And then the other component of it are the resellers, the retailers that also have .com. I mean, you can take big brands like Dick's Sporting Goods or REI for Solo Stove, who are also selling the Solo Stove product on their websites. And then you can also take kind of your random kind of smaller boutique type retailers that are trying to move the product in a digital way, some way online, and how they're describing the product. What we've done is created some materials, some brand materials that we think actually make it easier for our resale partners to market our product. And we've made those materials available and then given them guidelines around how to use those materials so that if a customer is going on and they go to Lowe's.com or they go to REI.com or they go to, Joe Blow GardenCenter.com, that when they see a product description of our Solo Stove Bonfire, which is our top selling fire pit, that product description is going to be identical across all of those sites. And now the customer is just deciding, what platform do I prefer? And it goes back to what I mentioned earlier about making sure that we're giving customers time back by making it easiest for them to get the product where they want to get it. And that's all we really care about. Of course, we're fighting to make it so that solostove.com is the primary place that customers trust that they can go get Solo Stove product. But at the end of the day, if you love REI.com or you love Dick's Sporting Goods or Amazon or whatever platform or channel, we want to make sure that it's fast and easy for you to get it and that you're getting the same experience and education on that product on that site as you would on solostove.com.
If I'm going to be buying something that costs a couple $100, several $100, typically there's going to be a segment of customers that want to touch and feel that product and figure out what this is all about. When so much of your sales go through an e-commerce channel, how do you deliver enough safety to the consumer that they feel comfortable being able to buy something without having necessarily directly experienced the product firsthand?
I think two things are key to that. One is a really great return policy. I think, the idea of a 30-day, no questions asked. We operate a lot like Nordstrom's at Solo Stove. We make it super easy, and we want customers. And the thing is it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing in practice, right? It always stings a little bit to take that product back at, 29 days after somebody's used it every day for 29 days and it's been burned to heck, that kind of stings. I kind of feel like I'm getting taken advantage of. And yet you do that once or twice, and then in practice, you end up doing it hundreds of times as your brand grows. And the word starts getting out, like these guys really do stand behind their promises.
Yep.
And the reality is less than 0.3% of our customers do anything with regards to returns or damages or replacements. And so it's a small fraction, but in the early days, especially of the brand, as you're growing, you're almost tempted to make it harder for customers, and you just can't. You just have to make it easy for them to return the product. So that's number one. And then number two, I think free shipping both directions is really critical. So if somebody does return, they're not like, oh yeah, but I got to pay the $20 shipping to get that fire pit back to your facility.
Right.
Again, you bite the bullet. You kind of have to work in the economic side of that into your business model. But once you do, it pays dividends as customers talk to each other and say, yeah, you can trust these guys.
Yep. So I want to change gears here a little bit. A lot of e-commerce brands recently have received attention from investors as guys are rushing in saying, I want to buy these digitally native brands. As a CEO of a brand that has grown successfully on Amazon, what do you make of all this new investor activity, companies looking to buy private label brands?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's two sides to this as well. It seems like I keep saying there's two sides to things. There's two sides to lots and lots of things, this included. It's not just on the investor side, it's other brands, it's big brands. There's a lot of activity right now in the deal market from big brands, established brands, brands that we all know the names of, that have been sitting on the shelves in stores for the last 50 years, that are realizing that they're behind the curve when it comes to selling digitally, online, on Amazon, anywhere that's not in a physical store. And they're trying to partner or find e-com brands that really know how to do that well, partly because maybe they believe in the product, but more so because they believe in the team that really understands how to do that and are looking to acquire some skill sets within their larger conglomerate that can help them transform their businesses to more of a digital company versus a brick and mortar company. So I am seeing that as a trend quite frequently right now. And then the other side are the financial investors that just see e-commerce as the next growth opportunity. No different than what tech was, 5 or 7 or 8, 10 years ago, and even kind of post early 2000s, where that's where all of the financial dollars were flocking. Were tech companies, software companies, and so forth. E-com is now starting to kind of be in that realm for these financial buyers, and there's a ton of interest. There's a lot of money floating around in the market from investors, pension funds, endowments from universities, and they need to invest those dollars somewhere, and they're seeing e-com as kind of the place to invest dollars for the future.
So let me ask you a final question. What's next for Solo Stove that consumers can look forward to? What can you share with us?
Yeah, so we love what we've been able to accomplish up to now. It's been phenomenal. We've hit some pretty serious milestones in terms of the number of families that we've been able to help gather around the fire. And we think that we have gained a good enough reputation in terms of over-engineering of our products, the quality, the longevity, the return policy, the customer experience when you deal with our brand unrelated to the product, that there are opportunities now for us to expand farther into that backyard category, the outside category, into products that will make it easier and better for people to have good moments that lead to lasting memories. So you're going to see from Solo Stove an expansion on our product lines.
Great.
That do more and more of that.
That's great. John, I want to thank you for joining us today on the BuyBox Experts podcast. For those of you interested in learning more about the Solo Stove, I encourage you to check out solostove.com. And now to finish today's podcast, I'd like to share some final thoughts. For third-party sellers to be successful on Amazon, a critical lever will be soliciting feedback from customers. We at BuyBox Experts are really big fans of the team at Ecom Engine and its tools that help Amazon sellers to simplify the process of messaging customers of Amazon orders. To learn more, go to ecomengine.com. And with that, I want to thank you for listening today, and I look forward to joining you next time on the BuyBox Experts podcast.
Thanks for listening to the BuyBox Experts podcast. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web, and we'll see you next time.